welcome to the Artist Talk series for the Kansas City Artist Coalition. I am host and programs director, Jen Harris, and I'm so glad that you're here today. We are talking to one of our June exhibiting artists, Eric Conrad. Born in Toronto, Ontario, he completed his BA in Mathematics and Fine Art from Kalamazoo College in Michigan, and then he studied at the School of Art Institute in Chicago and the Rhode Island School of Design, where he received an MFA for painting and printmaking in 2000. He has shown his sculptures, drawings, and installations internationally, including exhibitions in Chile, New York, Colorado, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Florida, Oregon, Illinois, Iowa, California, Hungary, Poland, and New Zealand. All over the place. Wow. He has received a Pollock-Krasner Foundation Grant and a number of artist residencies, including the Fine Arts Work Center in Massachusetts, the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art, the Anderson Ranch ISLA in Chile, and the Frans Masereel Centrum in Belgium. He created a solo public art exhibition for the Miami-Dade International Airport and was recently invited to create a large public installation as part of the SACO 1.0 Contemporary Art Biennale in Chile. Eric lives and works in Kansas, and he is exhibiting a really beautiful, incredible installation piece in the Snap Space Gallery in June of 2023 at the Kansas City Artist Coalition. So please come check out the exhibit, and in the meantime, enjoy the interview. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Hello, viewers. Welcome, everybody. We are here today with Eric Conrad, who is exhibiting at the Kansas City Artist Coalition later this year. And I'm really excited that you have taken time out of your very busy schedule to talk to us. So welcome to the KCAC Artist Talk podcast. Eric, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. I know folks have not, I'm going to show them your work later on, but you have vibrant and colorful work. And I would love if you could initially give us an idea, like a description of what it is that you build with, and then what it is you create. So can you tell us about your art, please?
Sure. So the work that I'm going to have at the Kansas City Artist Coalition this June, it's sculptural. I use different materials, including handmade paper and wood and printmaking techniques, but I'm also really fascinated with clothing and fabric and textiles. So it will involve all those things, and some of the pieces, like I said, will be sculptural and they'll be sort of like leaning against the wall, larger pieces, and then I'll have some pieces that are on paper that are framed.
Excellent.
So just like a general overview. Yeah.
What is tell me about the creative process for you, as far as you're talking about these sculptures are large and beautiful, and they have form and shape, but they seem to be very whimsical. So what I'm wondering is, what level of intentionality goes into the final draft of this? Is it intuitive, or do you map it out ahead of time?
It's pretty intuitive. So that's for me, that's the really exciting thing about making art, is sort of like not knowing how things are going to end up when they start.
Yes.
So, and that's so like accident and chance and mistakes and like sort of figuring things out and changing things along the way is a really important part of my process. It's actually a really meaningful part of my process. So, like some of those pieces in the show, I started out by making my own paper. So I shredded paper and got paper pulp and started making abstract forms, embedding clothing, like bits of clothing, found clothing into that paper, and then the pieces sort of evolve from there. I'm just like adding and subtracting, and really, like, for me, the most interesting thing about that process is just becoming, like, paying attention to my decision-making process, which is a total mystery to me. Like, why do I choose that color? Like, why do I put the paint on in that way versus another way? And sort of trying trying to put things together in a way that they resonate with each other or start to gel. So.
I love that you have this tactile process, and then what's the emotional process for you? Like why do you make art, Eric?
Yeah, well, maybe I could talk a little bit about where I started.
Yeah, I would love that.
So way back when I was an undergrad, I was making really large scale figurative paintings. So my background is like that kind of traditional figurative painting. They're large scale paintings, and they're cropped in unusual ways, and the figures were larger than human scale. And I was really interested in the way that they could sort of spill out into the surrounding space, and not just the imagery, but in sort of a confrontational way, but sort of like the emotional narratives and like the sort of psychological tone of the work would sort of come out into the space. And I became very interested in that and in scale, and I think that really led to making sculptures and installations. And so, and my work really did begin to deal with codependent relationships and narcissism and power dynamics within relationships, and dealing with trauma and childhood trauma. And so all of those things were starting to play into my work. And I did several bodies of work that had to do with that. And if you, like, I have a website and Instagram account, and you can see some of that older work. They're like large scale figurative sculptures they're kind of like stuffed animals. They're part human and part figure, and they're intersecting each other, intertwined, and really thinking about how strong our desire is to be loved and to form connection, and also thinking about just the way that humans are driven by impulses to be cooperative and to work with each other, and also to be self-interested, and I think it's the contradiction between those two drives that also interests me in making my work. So anyway, that kind of led up to a point last year, or about a year and a half ago. I was invited to be part of a Chilean biennial, and so I went to Chile and did a really big installation there that involved a giant pair of tighty-whities that was hanging outside of a building that was like 8 feet wide, and a huge sock that I'd taken down to Chile in a suitcase. But I built this big installation, and the structure was sort of like it was based on the kind of figurative combinations that I was making, but it was more abstract. And so that was really a turning point for me. I began to work more abstractly, and that really led to the work that I'm going to be showing at the Kansas City Artists Coalition. So sorry, that was long, and I hope
no, this is perfect.
Kind of a sense of it, but
you have nothing to apologize for. I think that there's obvious that there's a tenderness in you, and I can't imagine seeing work of yours that doesn't translate. And I think working in the abstract is kind of this. I'm a writer, right? And when you start going through transformative years when you are intentionally leaning into the things that hurt, the things that make your life harder, the things that you do to make your life harder, I feel like the work becomes more abstract because it's a muddy place that it's dark and confusing, and there's, what's this memory doing here? What's this texture doing here? What's this desire doing here? And so I'm translating what you're communicating through that filter of my own process of trauma exploration and hopefully of emotional release from those kind of caverns. So I want to know, in the realm of creating, first of all, How big of a suitcase do you have to transport a large sock? How
Well,
long was the sock? Do you have any idea what the dimensions were on it?
I think the sock was about, it was at least 8 feet long,
Oh
maybe
my
10
God.
feet long.
Okay.
It was a giant tube sock with white stripes. So very, for me, and the tidy whities was, like white underwear with red and blue stripes. They're
Hmm.
going like Fruit of the Balloon. This is really nostalgic for me. Growing up, I
Hearkening
had.
to childhood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so they were like maybe 8 to 10. Both of them were about 8 to 10 feet long, and they pretty much filled up the biggest suitcase I could find. Um, I was really hoping that the suitcase would be searched on the way down,
Yeah.
but
Just so somebody would have to kind
don't
of
think
clown car pull it out.
like what. Yeah, but I don't, it didn't happen, but yeah.
So when you're leaning into your current exhibition, are you going in with preconceived notions about what will be presented? I mean, obviously the on paper work is probably already completed or in the process of being completed, but
Yeah.
as far as installation goes, is it like I have an idea of what this installation will look like and we'll see what happens in the space, or do you have a very specific like process and modality of creating?
Well, for this show, pretty much everything is already made and will exist in the form that it is now in my studio. But and I have an idea about how things are going to be laid out in that space. I really like that space because it's a little bit unusual. It's in the smaller snap space, so like there's some weird angles with walls, and I think it will be. I'm interested in and I'm hoping it feels a little claustrophobic in there. So like you're standing and there's this piece here in front of you on one wall and then behind another that kind of takes up your field of vision, because I think you'll have to be kind of close to the work in that space to see it. So but I do need to like kind of, when we're installing, things always change, and I'll sure I'll make adjustments, but this is, it's not like an installation that's really site specific where I'm going to build it on site, and in that way these pieces are pretty much made already. So
Do
yeah.
you have an emotional reaction that you're vying for with people seeing this work, or are you wanting it to
Yeah.
just unfold to them? Like what are you hoping people take away from your work?
Well, for me, like it's most interesting when things are, when it's really not clear what's um the way I should be feeling when I look at something. So um, when something's happy and sad at the same time. For me, that's like where meaning can emerge between the contradiction between those emotions. So, um, yeah, so that's what I'm interested in. Like, if people laugh, that's fantastic. If there's like um, other responses too, that are maybe um, like you mentioned, like maybe like a more tender response, or um, you know, that's great too. Um, but yeah, I think like a mixed emotions are. Can we cut this part? This is like okay. Um, sorry, I just got
Listen,
tongue tied for a second.
no, you're totally listen.
Yeah,
You're allowed to have the thought while it's
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Like this is art is complicated in that way of like, well, every emotion I could possibly have goes into creating it, right? And
Sure,
even if it winds up joyful, that doesn't mean the process was easy. And even if
absolutely.
it's about trauma, it doesn't mean I don't feel joyful to have released this back into the wilds, or
Sure,
truly put it down in some
right,
way.
right.
And so I feel like that's it makes total sense that you are open as a creative to everyone's interpretation, and that you can't possibly hand everything you put into this into somebody else's hands, right?
Sure, sure, sure. And I think so much of it too, like, as I'm working, I have my own kind of like secret stories about things and narratives and things that I'm thinking about, or inside jokes, or that I don't expect to be communicated specifically to an audience person. But um, I do think, like, for me, you like I was saying, I love things that are happy and sad at the same time, or um, that are beautiful and grotesque, or that are confrontational and vulnerable. So I really like those kinds of contradictions. So if that comes across in the work, that's fantastic. If somebody just looks at my work and like laughs, or whatever, that's fine too. But and that, I guess another thing I'm interested in is transformation. So like, and you kind of alluded to this too, but just taking a traumatic event or a difficult emotional experience and transforming it into something that's positive, and vice versa. Like that's also really interesting to me. So if that comes across in the work, that's fantastic.
What's the first piece of art you remember making? Like, do you have a distinct memory?
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because my mom just sent me a photo of myself when I was, I think I was 4 or 5 years old. And so this wasn't the first artwork that I made, but I began sewing as at a really early age. So working with fabrics and materials has always been a part of my life. And she sent me this photo of me holding a purse that I had made for myself, that I hand stitched. So yeah, I think that's one of the first things that I've made.
I bet you were so proud and so cute.
I was super proud. Yeah.
Who taught you how to sew?
Yeah. I can't remember. I think my mom taught me like basic stitches, and then I sewed throughout my childhood. And so I think it was a combination of my mom teaching me things, and then also just learning on my own.
Yeah.
Like how to use a sewing machine, and how to put things to, how to make something that's two-dimensional become something that's three-dimensional, through like panels of fabric. And yeah.
That's so exciting. So what do you sew outside of art now? Do you make any of your own clothing? Do you have projects that you do that are more literally translated in some way?
I do. Every once in a while, I'll get my machine out and just make clothes,
That's
for
exciting.
myself or for my friends. So
I envy this skill set. I'm looking at wedding dresses now, and I'm like, I don't know. I got 46 ideas in my head. How can we bring all of these together? And I was like, I have no skill set for that kind of experience. So I think it's very interesting when you can get in there and decide, these are the pants I want to wear, or this is the coat I want to wear this season. Like that's a really incredible skill set.
Yeah. Well, I'm jealous that you're looking through like all of that beautiful fabric of wedding dress material.
Oh, there's so many options. My fiance showed me this beautiful like lavender tulle dress this morning that she wants, and I kind of bring her these. We have a book called On Flowers that I got at a botanical show, and I can just hand her that book, and I'm like, I want them to be this color. That's the translation I have. I'm like, I don't necessarily have the connection to fabric, only because it hasn't been a huge part of my life. But but gardening, flowers, that sort of thing have been they're more tangible to me, right? But that overlap of inspiration where, one doesn't really exist without the other, or fabric and design doesn't exist without the beauty of nature and its many color presentations. Like that's just, it all ultimately roots back to the same source, but it's interesting where we cling to the process,
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited about your exhibition in June, and I'm grateful that you shared a little bit of your process and your creative experience with us. Is there anything that coming up in this exhibition that you want to make sure people know about you or your work that I haven't asked you about? Sometimes you've got a hidden message that I just don't know.
Not that I can think of, but feel free to contact me if you want to talk more of anybody. And also just wanted to mention how excited I am to be in the exhibition with the other artist that's presenting. Her work is fantastic. And
thank you.
I first became familiar with it several years ago at the Lawrence Art Center. There was a print fair.
Is it
Kristen? Bought some of that.
Kristen Martin, I don't know how to say her last name. Martin, CIC.
her work is beautiful.
Oh, she has a whole series of like pool toys
Yeah,
and inflatable
yeah,
I know. I also, as a Gemini, as a June baby, these are my
yeah,
these are my months for color and leisure. And yeah, I
yeah,
think that your emotional processes are in line with each other, and that this is going to make
yeah.
for an incredible exhibit. So I'm really excited about it.
Mm.
What is your Instagram and what's your website so people can look for you?
Yeah, my Instagram it's Eric Conrad, but with 3 underscores in between Eric and Conrad, because there are so
Perfect.
many Eric Conrads up. And then my website is eric-conrad.com.
Perfect. Well, Eric, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much. It was really
Of course.
nice.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in June.